Hello, everyone. Welcome to awkward start to part 59 of our series, Libraries in Response, that we started 2 years ago and have explored a number of different issues. We're a late start. I'm going to zoom through these, a little more quickly. We are the Gigabit Libraries Network. This is our mantra here, supporting library invention worldwide. This is what we've been focused on for the last 24 months. Seems like, I can't tell if it's 1 year or like 5 years in 1 year, So we have three great speakers today, state librarians from Idaho, Indiana, and Ohio. Stephanie, Jacob, and Wendy are going to present and give us what it said when you registered, a look back at a couple of years past and now what all that means and going forward. So this is a thing we've talked about a number of times, the idea that there should be a public access station, a library outlet close to everybody within walking distance would be ideal. They can be in laundromats. It's a great initiative from Libraries Without Borders in Washaterias, and this is one in Tennessee, with a charging station and next to a little free library. It could be in a city hall or a community building anywhere, and it could even, have a librarian staff it, which would be kind of cool. But libraries as second responders, the pandemic is not the only thing going on here. Climate change is upon us, and pretty severe warning there. This is a chart of billion-dollar disasters up to 2018. This is the updated chart and you can see here the spike is higher and ever, and then here it's just kind of, now it's new average. So kind of daunting. Can we do anything about it? We have technology, which is part of the problem, of course, but we do have a lot. And this is a picture of the South Pole of Jupiter, for goodness sake. But maybe, this is like a survey that showed that only 25% of the population surveyed believe that people and dinosaurs definitely did not live at the same time. So what does that mean for policy making if that's our level of understanding education? We have a couple of quotes submitted from Wendy and Jacob, and then a later one came in from Stephanie. I apologize to all of you for asking you for this at a late date. This is not our best hour, as I could say, for these, but these are great and really helpful. And I just added one myself here, just to kind of make that same point about, responsibility. We all have, a way to deal with things. So let's get to it here. We may be a short time.
Noon was a return.
Hello?
Return.
Hello? Somebody? We may have a short time here with this particular link we're using. It may not get us through the whole hour. So I'm going to make yet another special request of our speakers to condense the remarks a little bit more, maybe under 10 minutes, and then we'll try to have some Q&A until we run out of time. So thanks again, and we will start off with who do we agree we're going to start off with? Stephanie. Welcome, Stephanie. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here. So I'm going to kind of do some recapping from our budget presentation that we had just last week, and again, talk briefly about what we've been doing the last couple of years and where we're headed. I'm going to start my little timer here too, Dawn, so I don't go over. So here's the theme that we've been using for the last couple of years, and we're likely to see it. I see Dennis and some friends from IMLS with us this morning. This is likely going to be our theme for our new 5-year LSTA plan, and that's that Idaho Libraries are helping keep students learning, adults earning, and improving the health and well-being of Idahoans. I think the tricky part with our LSTA plan is the improving health and well-being, the funding that we're we're getting to support that program is likely coming from other federal sources, and that'll be kind of a challenge, I think, to mix in our regular LSTA funds with some of these other funding sources. Let's see if I can advance that. There, whoops, let's get there going. Okay, so libraries are helping keep students learning by offering our Read to Me early literacy programs. We just started the Libraries and Laundromat program that Dawn mentioned earlier, our books and reference materials, access to computers and mobile hotspots, and digital content, including our statewide databases that we've offered for 25 years, and our new Idaho Digital eBook Alliance that's focused on K through 12 ebooks, and it was started with CARES funds from IMLS, and it was supported with additional federal funds last year. This year, we're asking for ongoing state revenue for that, about $307,000, which is about less than $1 per Idaho student. So we had that on our strategic plan for years and years. And when the pandemic started, we knew we had to figure out a way to provide ebooks statewide, and that's what we've been able to do. And I'm really pleased with the response so far. We're helping keep, sorry, my advancer's not working great. We're helping keep adults earning by working with partners throughout the state. Our Department of Labor is using our public libraries for meeting sites. And I think we've got a cool summer intern program that we've been working on for the last couple of years. It's going great, and excited about the efforts that we're doing for workforce development. And then we're improving the health and well-being of Idahoans through a variety of initiatives. Most recently, the addition of telehealth and library sites in 2 rural libraries supported with private Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation funds. These are some of the libraries that are participating in that program. They're scheduling telehealth appointments on a regular basis, often saving their patrons many hours of drive time to get their health needs met. This is myself and our Orfino library director, doctor, and our health partners encouraging residents to check out a checkup at your library. And we're excited about the potential to bring in a lot more telehealth sites in the coming years. And then we also have asked for funding to support our E-rate, and we have some state reimbursement funds that we're using to support broadband costs. So we're asking for some additional funding to help with that. That's been a great program. Our ARPA funds during the last 7 months, Idaho Libraries have utilized over 90% of the $2.3 million in ARPA funds received from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Our legislature also has to grant us the spending authority for all of our federal funds. So it's not a given that even though IMLS or other generous funding sources provide those, they still have to go through that. So we're waiting. March 10th is our final hearing, so we get the authority on some pretty big asks this year. But I think they've been pleased, and I know I have, that we're down to our last $98,000 in ARPA funds. We provided $1.8 million for 48 libraries through a very competitive grant program, and additional funds that allowed 96 public libraries to purchase more ebooks or get connected to our digital ebook alliance. We've never been able to award so many proposals to extend digital access to public, school, academic, and tribal libraries, and I'm looking forward to seeing the full implementation of these projects. These one-time funds help libraries build their digital infrastructure by adding new public computers, 7 outreach vehicles, hotspots and devices for public checkout, and much more. And to ensure that Idahoans can access these services, we have several items that we're asking for in addition to those funds that will really help build that infrastructure and ensure that more folks are accessing that. So our big request is $3.5 million in one-time treasury funds to improve public library buildings to enable work, education, and health monitoring in communities with critical needs. And we think that this funding will reach an additional 23 libraries to allow them to start telehealth sites. And anxious to hear if any other of our state libraries library colleagues are tapping into this funding source to get that done. It looks like the requirements are a little daunting. We're just digging into those now, but we don't have state funds for construction. So we're pretty excited about this opportunity. And then we're also, the governor supported our suggestion, I guess, to lead the efforts for the digital equity funds that are coming to each state. So we are kicking that off with our Digital Inclusion Summit, March 2nd and 3rd, and working with stakeholders across the state. We expect up to 1.25 million to be coming in to help with the planning efforts. And then once that plan is in place, additional funds should be coming hopefully to the Commission for Libraries that we will help administer. And then there will be discretionary competitive funds that people can also tap into. So the funds I think will be available in October, and then additional funding after that. And if any other state librarians are leading the charge in these efforts, we're really anxious to connect with you. We're just going to go ahead and dive into our planning efforts, whether we get the funding or not, because it's needed and we have a lot of needs and we're excited about that. So that is also on the docket for us to consider this year. And then I think to wrap up, let's get my notes here in order. We have really appreciated the support from IMLS, from our governor's office, our legislative support for the Idaho Digital eBook Alliance, and the ARPA funds at 2.3 million. That was huge. The Idaho library community has been able to build their technology infrastructure, and we're in a much better place to serve Idahoans than we were prior to COVID. The requests that we're working on now to build on those investments and ensure that our K through 12 students continue to have better access to reading materials that support the curriculum and builds their love of reading, that at least 23 more libraries can offer telehealth services, and that the state will have a solid collaborative plan in place to ensure that more Idahoans can access digital resources and services. Those are all, I think, outcomes and sort of where we're at right now, what we've been doing the last couple of years, and where we're headed down the road. And I'll put in some links to, I think I already included the invite for our Digital Inclusion Summit. I'll put in a link to our website, and then also our telehealth toolkit. We have 2 other funding sources that are pending in addition to the 3.5 million. So that's a lot that's going on, but we're excited about it. And I will pass it back to Dawn and hopefully get some questions at the end.
Super cool, Emily. I'm sorry, Stephanie. That is great. It really feels like the world has changed for libraries, and as we go forward. So next up is Jacob from Indiana. Jacob, welcome. Please take us away here.
I thank you, Don. Thank you for the attendees, and thank you to Stephanie and Wendy for presenting today. I don't have any slides to share, but I thought I'd give a little overview of what's happened in the last couple of years in Indiana. I'm the, as Don mentioned, the director of the Indiana State Library, and I can talk a little bit about how Indiana libraries have responded to the pandemic. The reason for my quote about adaptability is, in a lot of ways, as many of us know, this is just the latest iteration of how libraries are adapting to our customers and changing things. One of the big ones in the past, of course, was the internet, and this, I think, is going to be similar into how libraries are going to respond and adapt and change. And Stephanie's example about the laundromat is a really great demonstration of that. So if you go back 2 years, libraries began meeting more often, I think, and talking more, and I think that more collaboration has come out of that. I think that's a big change if you go back to March of 2020, when all in-person things stopped and everyone started talking more, similar to what is set up here today. One thing that has come out of that in Indiana is the Indiana Digital Library. And so this is a Overdrive consortium that's going to serve 200 plus libraries. We used to have multiple small Overdrive branches, groups, consortiums, and beginning March 1, we'll have one consortium that will serve pretty much all public libraries in the state. And so state library is going to use federal funds to cover the platform fees, and it really is a good thing that the libraries are working together. There's going to be a collection development team that will help identify needs within the consortium and address holds lists. In the past, there had been libraries that maybe be part of a consortium but didn't spend their fees because they were small and didn't have the time or the ability to get to it. And so the funds will be spent, they'll be spent in a strategic and smart way. And most importantly, library customers, patrons will be able to have a better experience. They'll have much more items to select from. And they also will have less holds and a shorter wait time for any materials. The one area that I'm a little concerned about is, as you've seen across the country, various challenges to collections and things is if you have a large e-book collection, and it takes one person, one patron to have a concern, how are you going to handle that? And so we will work our way through that. The way we're planning to do that is to have participating libraries, their directors, and myself kind of convene and make decisions if that comes to it. Hopefully that does not. Our Great Lakes group, of state librarians has been meeting regularly through the pandemic, which I'll just mention that's one thing that didn't happen really before the pandemic and has been. So the state librarians of all the Great Lakes libraries are sharing, but from that small group, there has not been any real challenges of ebooks, but we all kind of agree that that's probably going to happen in the near future. So that's one great collaboration, and hopefully there are more. Another is that were things that we just wanted to address was internet connectivity. Internet connectivity is pretty well supported through the state library managed E-rate consortium in Indiana. We also have funds from the State Technology Fund, which covers not all, but most of the funding above the state E-rate. And so we work with Education Networks of America, or ENA, and they provide really strong support. They often are alerting small libraries of outages before they themselves realize their service is down. And so that's how we are handling connectivity in Indiana through our E-rate consortium. Thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit about our CARES and rescue grants. They are a real demonstration of how libraries are adapting because you get a real-time granular input from themselves, from the libraries, about what they need and how they are adapting, or what they believe they need to serve their patrons in this new reality. So we received $3.47 million in the state library in Indiana for rescue funds. And of that, we allocated $2.4 million, so big majority of it, for competitive grants. And then we also did $150,000 for our prison and state hospital libraries as well. And that was more direct aid without having them apply. We used a form, so we had over 250 grant applications, and so we went with a formula to distribute the funds versus fully funding some grants and not others. And so we had school, public, and academic libraries that applied. The grants received kind of give a window, as I say, into the ways libraries are approaching and adapting. And so I just have this number one thing that still came in as a request was technology and meeting space technology and changing that. So although many things are changing and the technology in many cases was different or not exactly the same as what it was replacing, meeting space technology and this technology in the building period was still the number one request that we received from these 250 plus applications in Indiana. The number two highest requested thing was things surrounding making operations more automated. So contactless checkout, lockers, RFID, furniture around the checkout station. That was the number two most requested kind of broad category. Number three was Wi-Fi, expanding reach. As I said, we have a pretty strong broadband network in Indiana, but expanding the reach to parking lots, hotspots, so that patrons could take that home and use it. That was number three. Number 4 was outdoor technology and furniture and story walks, those types of things that allow patrons to go and experience and use the library outside of the traditional walls. In that similar theme, number 5 was bookmobiles, book bikes, those types of things that allow them to take out. Number 6 was ebooks, pretty self-explanatory. Number 7 was PPE, HVAC improvement, filters, those types of things that were more real nuts and bolts things that libraries felt they needed at a local level. What I thought was interesting was what wasn't high on the list was programming. Now programming in some ways can be relatively inexpensive, so maybe they're doing other things through the friends groups, others, and also digitization of collections was very low as well. So I won't make any editorial beyond that, but I just noticed from those are 2 things that were low. And so again, this gives some insight into how Indiana libraries are responding. We typically have a LSTA mini grant program with technology and digitization grants. We are not doing those this year, but we plan to restart them next year, and because they provide direct assistance to libraries, and they also give us a lot of insight into the overall needs of libraries in the state. Our plans for 2022, in addition to continuing to wrap up the rescue grant program, is we are going to attempt to have our in-person conferences. So our Differences U is one of our largest conferences that we have, and it is centered on support staff. So not professional librarians, but all the support staff in libraries. And we are looking to have that in September here at the State Library. And then also our resource sharing conference, Discovery to Delivery, D2D. We're planning to also have that in person, either in August or September. We've continued to have these conferences during the pandemic, but they've mainly been online and virtual. And so we're attempting to kind of move forward with more in-person learning. So that is my just real high level. And again, thank you for the invitation, Don. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Super interesting, Jake. Quick question. The survey, it was a great bunch of questions or service choices. Were those listed to prioritize, or was it just open? What would you like to see?
It was open. That was just me going back through the applications and kind of cherry picking the data and seeing what was the most frequently requested items or requested items through the budget.
So you didn't give them kind of multiple choice, rank these, and just say whatever.
No, we allowed them to say, basically we wanted to put the money in their hands. So you come to us with what you need.
No, that's interesting. Thanks. A lot of questions for both of you already, but let's get to Wendy and so we can get through these presentations, have a more open discussion. Also, among the 3 of you, I'd like for you to ask each other questions when we conclude. Wendy, welcome. You're the only one that actually I knew before today. I mean, we've talked on the phone, we never met in person, but thank you for coming and tell us about Ohio. How is it?
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it. And thanks, Stephanie and Jake. Obviously, I have a little bit of a history with Jake there, 17 years at the State Library in Indiana for a while. So a lot of familiarity with what was going on in his talk too. So that was very exciting to hear. So Ohio, and the reason Don and I know each other is because I've been very, very focused on broadband and throughout my career. So it's been really great to reconnect with Don in this new role. So a lot of the things that have been changing in Ohio libraries due to the pandemic are very similar to what you've heard already. It's nationwide trends. It's making the programming more virtual. It's including more outdoor spaces. It's including different ways to incorporate health in different library programming. We have some really exciting cooking demonstration kinds of things going on in some of our libraries. And I just recently did a tour of a library up in Northeast Ohio that has a full kitchen that looks like the morning shows that do the cooking demonstrations. And she has a little Britney Spears headset that she can talk on. And it's just the coolest thing. Being able to see the libraries expand into different kinds of health literacy and things like that have been really exciting. Ohio has been kind of a leader in terms of the public libraries offering the access to the COVID test kits I think we were the first state to really have that out there. And it, was mostly well received. There of course were issues, staff that were concerned about it, and rightfully so. I mean, they're worried about their health and what it's going to mean for them. So it's been interesting to see both sides of that. And one thing that has really helped that is the ability of the individual libraries in Ohio having their own local authority and their own local decision-making abilities. So that's something that we're very proud of. And I know it's not unique, but it is something that Ohio libraries are very, very happy to have. One thing I've noticed is the way that the number of services have just expanded and nothing seems to be contracting. Just, watching the news of what's going on in libraries currently, we're starting to see the tax help come back to the libraries now. And I just doing this on top of everything else that they're doing, there's a lot of concern for, staff mental welfare and, who's getting burnt out and how are we going to be able to support our staffs to continue to provide these great services and to be the community centers that we know libraries can be, with all of the additional demands being put on their time. But we have seen a lot of great partnerships with schools and other government organizations and nonprofits around the state. Ohio's been really leading the way in terms of different meal support, meal distribution kinds of things that have been really helpful to help in some of those underserved areas around the state. So that's been really great to see. We've been able to, in my tour of some of those Northeast Ohio libraries, I was really excited to see every library offering passport application services. That's just another service that libraries are adding on that is vital in their communities, but is again, starting to tax those individual staff members a lot. And then, at the state library level, I feel like we've started to see a lot of additional challenges that I don't necessarily have answers for either. But one of the big things for us is as a government depository library, we've seen that the regional depositories around the state have really wanted to scale back what they're doing in terms of government depository requirements. And that is even more challenging at the state library level because of our reduction in staff that we've had over the past 20 years. We've had the state library's budget reduced in every budget cycle. So we've had staff reduced by about 50%. So it's been a significant challenge for us to continue to provide the support that we need to provide to libraries across the state. Also, the changes in the NLS requirements for allowing librarians to sign off on the Talking Books program for learning disabilities. That's an extra step that's being put onto the local libraries that not really a lot of extra support being offered there, but being able to expand any of our resources and provide support for our sister state agencies, providing support for our statewide programs, everything we can do to support resource sharing with the physical resource sharing with the digital library. I got a private note. I'm going to tell on you, Ann Kennedy, right now. I got a private note from her that I think Indiana's going to surpass us in number of circulations when you get your new digital library out there. So we've been very proud of how far ahead we've been in the nation. So I think Jake and I will have a nice little wager going on. We'll have to set that up for next year's digital circulation there. But the library's ability to provide the digital equity, and this is all different kinds of libraries. This is all different kinds of libraries across the state. I've seen some school libraries win some great awards for helping students adapt to how to do the learning environments virtually and how to be better organized in that kind of an environment, as well as we've had the Guiding Ohio Online program going on for many, many years that we're very proud of supporting digital inclusion and digital equity in rural Ohio, especially. And our partners at the Ohio Public Library Information Network received an ARPA grant to support North Star licenses for every public library in the state. So we're very excited about expanding that kind of service to all our libraries. Yeah, so I think those were the big things I wanted to talk about. I think that, we're all seeing the big changes, the big macroeconomic changes that are affecting all of us, the inflation issues that are affecting our ability to, provide more resources, more services, the cost of the e-content, the great resignation, the number of staff that have turned over and not necessarily come back in a lot of libraries. So I feel like there's a lot that is happening that I did want to echo Stephanie and Jake's. We are, of course, grateful to IMLS and our partners there for all the support they provided through CARES and ARPA over the last few years. But there's going to be so much more that needs to be done. And, nothing's going away. The opioid crisis is not going away. And we're seeing, the effects of that in all of our libraries. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot to be watching right now.
It's a lot. And you all have made the point that it's not only a lot, but it's growing. I mean, the number of things, items, services that you just touched on, kind of just quickly because of the time constraints here is mind-boggling. But it's kind of the default setting. People think of something, whether they're in government or ordinary patrons, and they don't really know where to go. And so, well, we go to the library. And we've had a long-standing kind of beef with government that's been offloading services onto libraries. The short version of that is eGov. So you have every agency at every level of government spawning applications that don't look alike, work alike, all that. And you go, well, that's great. You've done that for cost savings and productivity gains. Fine. Well, who exactly are those for? They go, well, for people that are connected. And they go, whoa, really? Okay, well, what about the people who aren't connected? I mean, Amazon can do that, yeah, but you're the government. You have to assure access to public information, public services. They go, oh yeah, well, they can go to the library. They'll help you. Okay, did you share any of those savings with the library for taking on your customer support? No, we didn't, and we don't have to because they never say no. Has anybody ever heard of libraries just refusing to even try to help somebody or anybody with anything? So it's just a long-standing, it's just the idea of taking advantage of libraries is I don't know. You all are such, sunny people. It's astounding and it's wonderful. And I think that's what's making this go. I'm distressed to hear that, so much resignations, but it's so easy to understand. Just, trying to deal with irate customers, difficult customers, new technologies, new everything. And people going, well, I just had enough. I've been in this for 20 years or 30 or whatever. I think this would be a good time for me to kind of step out. So Emily, our substitute host today, is actually a recent graduate, a new librarian in Massachusetts. She runs the bookmobile program for her library. And so it's great to see young librarians coming on. We think we're going to maybe devote some attention through this programming to encourage more people to enter the field and encourage the ones that already have and find out what they imagine the future is going to be in their own future. So one of the things that came up, and of course I want to add Stephanie's quote. Thank you all for your quotes. I asked our speakers to give us these quotes kind of at the 11th hour, and they managed to. And the one from Stephanie just came in, so I'm going to read it. Pick battles big enough to matter, but small enough to win, by Jonathan Kozol. I think that's what it is. Big enough to matter, but small enough to win. That's a pretty good guide. And I like the fact that you each kind of pick something that is meaningful for you. Maybe you could actually talk about why your specific quote was meaningful. How do you kind of use that? Do you use it, or is it you just thought of something or looked up a quote or whatever? So Stephanie, where did that quote come from?
I think it just came from maybe the experiences this week, and kind of taking on that digital equity piece. Although in Idaho, we can't even use the word equity. We're calling it our digital access for all Idahoans plan. So, but that's, I think, really an opportunity for libraries to shine. And so being asked to kind of take on the lead for that state and connect with all these stakeholders, I'm super excited about that. I think that those funds, it's a small amount compared to the hundreds of millions that are coming in to address just straight broadband, which is desperately needed, but connecting those underserved populations with access is our opportunity to shine. And we're going to just kind of try to take the reins and come up with a great plan and then use those funds to implement. And I think it's going to be a game changer for our state. So I'm excited about that. So that's one of those battles that you just have to, let's just drop off some of the small stuff and focus on these big opportunities.
Winnable opportunities. I think that's fair. But I'm glad you brought up broadband, or brought broadband back up, is that we understand that COSLA, your National Association Chief Officers of State Library Agencies, has filed with NTIA that the chief library officers should be part of the state planning process, be required under NTIA. These $45 billion for broadband, another $15 billion or something like that for adoption, and that NTIA would be well advised to encourage, if not require, the states to have the state librarians part of that. There's a required planning process, and have the librarians be part of that group. I wondered if you thought that was. Maybe you have to say it's a good idea, but how practical do you think, how winnable do you think that is, and how receptive do you think your state governments would be to having you, the three of you that are here today, kind of weigh in on usability and infrastructure, any of the different aspects of broadband? Go ahead, Stephanie. Since you brought it up.
Yeah. I think we have the expertise, and at least in Idaho, our Department of Commerce, they understand our role, which was really helpful, and they don't really have the capacity. It's a broadband office of one. They're looking for additional staff, but it's tricky. So they really recommended, and we are shifting, Wendy, at getting your staff reduced by 50%. It is a capacity issue, but we're shifting some things around and working on things so that we do have the capacity. But we definitely have the expertise in libraries to address those underserved populations. We've made those connections with other state partners, and I think we're in a good position to do that. So I'm hopeful that NTIA will also see that the role that libraries can play, and particularly state librarians.
Well, we've added our voice to that. I don't know that will matter, but more matter, especially if they come from unexpected sources. This has been our experience in policy development. If new people show up with voices and ideas, they get a little bit different hearing than the usual suspects. Jake, what are you feeling or thinking about participating at the state level in terms of broadband policy?
There is as you mentioned, there is a state broadband group, but it is very understaffed. It's very small, and we've had discussion. What surprised me is at the very beginning, when we knew we were going to receive these rescue grants, that I reached out to our state broadband office to see if there's ways that maybe, I was interested in doing direct support, maybe doing something like that, but there really wasn't there's a need, but there wasn't a way to do that. It wasn't a way to a container to put that money in to actually make direct impact. And so I think there's all that infrastructure, all those small improvements and things that are needed at the field level. Indiana, like Ohio and Idaho, has a lot of rural areas. There's a lot of cities, but there's a lot of rural areas too. And so it's not as easy as just plunking down money to solve these issues. You need a lot of various ways to address it. And so I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Is how do you address broadband in a very rural community or community that maybe doesn't have high income, because a lot of times it's vendor dependent, it's provider dependent, and so working through that. So, I think that if with these additional federal funds, the state library and libraries in general will be a piece of it. So we've been having conversation with the broadband office, but I think it takes a lot of different pieces to address it, because it's not as easy as saying, okay, we're going to throw a bunch of money and all of a sudden this will be resolved. It's much more complicated than that. I think that's why it hasn't been addressed,
Absolutely. Infrastructure is, I mean, almost by definition, it's an ecosystem. It's not like we need to distribute another 5 million checkout hotspots, which itself is
Right.
a challenge, but no, it touches so many things, and librarians have really a lot of expertise from the end user standpoint. And this is kind of back to eGov. Who has a better understanding of how well designed these applications are than the people who are helping patrons actually navigate these online forms? And why don't the agencies that are creating these applications draw the library in the front end and design part? It seemed like it would be an excellent partnership, and also another way to extract some support from these agencies that are offloading to you. Wendy, where do you see this? So I just want to add Bob Boker, our old pal from ALA, put in the chat that ALA has also encouraged NTIA to reach out to the state libraries.
Yeah, it's definitely all the voices we can have lifting up the profile of state libraries, I think, is going to only help literally every citizen in the United States, because we serve all the libraries and the libraries serve all their patrons. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that we've laid a lot of really important groundwork in librarianship and making the case for our expertise in these areas, and for, like Stephanie said, the word equity is maybe not the best word to be using, but to include inclusivity and accessibility, and making sure that those kinds of ideas are not lost with all this infrastructure support that's coming out there, and making sure that people not only have the physical access, but also know what to do with the access, and are able to use it. So I think that we've done a lot of great groundwork over the last several decades leading up to this. So I think we're slowly starting to get the recognition from other departments of the state, other state agencies that are starting to realize that we do have a big role to play in this, and we're here to help. Like you said, Don, we never say no to anything, so we are here to help everyone, and as tiring as that can be, that's what we do.
Yeah, well, it is it's heroic, actually, and Jake, you mentioned rural areas, and it kind of is the place where all these issues perhaps are most difficult, because they're least served and people have less money and they're more expensive to actually serve. And it really is contributing to a lot of the, I would say, desperation that we see in the country. You're in a small town that doesn't have any kind of decent infrastructure, communication infrastructure. You're just seeing the kids all leaving and nobody's moving in. A company cannot move into a town without robust broadband. And so if you live in that town, I mean, what does your future look like? What does your 22, 25, years look like? And, it can be grim. I'm sure everybody's had experience going through small towns that you'd been through 20 years ago and were kind of, happening. Now there's just dust blowing down the street and things are boarded up pre-pandemic. So this is a really big issue. And I think that's what's new also, is the pandemic has just brought us to a sharp focus on how much we depend on it. That's not all good, of course, but we do. It's the way we've built our civilization wired. And so that's why there's so much money being poured into broadband. But in the usual way of these things, it's a big energetic reaction to a problem. And in the way of Congress, well, we have money, so here. But the agencies are completely incapable of handling these much funds. It's just way past their capacity. So what's happening now, as distinct from, say, the 2008, 2009 BTOP program, is that the Fed is offloading that responsibility of letting those funds out to the state governments. And that's where I think, you guys come in to play, because they just, well, how do we actually do that? How do we do that in a meaningful way? We've identified kind of three main barriers to adoption. Availability. If it's not there, then nothing else much matters. But then there's affordability. Okay, well, that's where the library comes in. That's library 101, is that the community pools its resources and shares them in a limited way, but at least there's a basic level of access through the library. And then the third one is usability. Well, what do I do with it, or how do I use it? And so that's also where the library comes in. We've started a project, we'll talk about it at another time, but looking at low Earth orbit satellites to deliver robust broadband into places that are completely underserved. We've done a few of these with IMLS funds and a grant, and it's a big deal. In Conrad, Montana, suddenly you've got cars surrounding the small library, just parked, because they got their award announcement in the city, which most small libraries are, departments of, upgraded them to a 25 megabit connection. Whoop-de-doo. Well, they got this dish, and suddenly they had 250 megabit connection, and it just kind of, knocked their socks off. And so people just, pour into the library to drink out of this fire hose. And it's just something that really has to be done. And this maybe is a different kind of infrastructure. We don't really know. It'll be interesting to talk about the details of this technology, which is fascinating, but we don't really know if it's gonna work. Stephen Abram. Stephen, why don't you just come on and say whatever it is that is, and rather than me read it off the chat. Stephen, our old friend Stephen Abram from Canada.
Okay, I was just unmuting.
Okay.
And I was just saying, I think we've identified a very, very core issue, which is the inability to say no, and I've observed this over my 45 years of being a librarian, the inability to set priorities and sacrifice anything. And this is a real challenge that the leadership of our state libraries, associations, and consortia, because they're all we're in this boat together, and the boat needs to float higher. So there needs to be and maybe this is an ICOLC thing, or a COSLA thing, or an ALA thing, where we bring everybody together and invest in a business-like facilitated process to figure out the right organizational structures to achieve this stuff. We tend to, in librarians, respect the local, and we should. But the local is really messed up on collaborating and moving forward quickly. We need some national leadership. We need a national body that says, broadband's a priority. Why is every state library developing its own way of filling out these freaking rescue forms? This is not smart. It's not even remotely smart. And we can hold hands and acknowledge that and say, we need to take some of our budget and put it into a pool and say, let's get the 5 best form fillers and develop a process to actually do this right. And things like that, so that we stop allowing them to divide and conquer, because they know we don't fight back. We say, thank you, thank you, thank you, please slap us again. Okay. And I'm so happy to see Wendy nodding like a crazy person, because I think this is something that a little leadership would get us there. Okay. And I think the process is our standard process. Just one last comment, Don, is it starts with wine. So we warm up, we get along with each other, we get to know each other, we get to know each of the gifts we bring and talents we bring to everything. And then we wine to get it out of our system, to be whiny as hell. Then we have some more wine and say, okay, someone in the room will say, let's move forward. And then we winnow and develop and create these little mini, like, our standard is task forces and committees, but it probably needs to be real infrastructure, an actual organization that does this, and then we can win. So wine, winnow, win.
Okay.
Stephen, I think you need to make a t-shirt. I think you could sell a lot of t-shirts with that process or not.
Yeah, Stephen, I think you should write an op-ed, how to say no or something like that. And okay, we're not yet at an hour, though we want to respect people's time, and often people have to schedule things that are on the hour. So we are at the hour, but everybody's welcome to stay. We're going to continue a little conversation here for a little while. I would like to ask each of you to, offer any other questions to each other, and then we'll come around to a kind of a final close. But I'd like to put out one topic maybe for discussion. That's the rise of telehealth at the library. So this is a kind of an example service related to what Stephen is talking about, but it seems so natural, especially in rural places where clinics are closing, to have a facility with good broadband, but there's more to it, right? So you mentioned it, Stephanie, but you all must be talking about that, and libraries must be doing something related to that. So let's just go through and just talk about telehealth as a kind of example of a new responsibility that's being asked for or loaded onto libraries.
I can start a little bit because that is where we're headed, and we polled every library because, to Wendy's point, often when we offer opportunities from the state library, they're not always receptive to adding more to their plate without taking things off, especially sometimes with workforce development and some of these other, again, opportunities that are out there. So I polled everyone, are you interested in telehealth? Are you seeing the needs? And we had a healthy response, and at least a quarter of the state's libraries, public libraries, said yes, we do see the needs, and we feel like we could take that on. So the additional funds from the Treasury, and then our health and welfare has an additional 500,000 that they're looking at pods, and kind of based on that Delaware model. Delaware, I think, is really leading all the states in telehealth initiatives and are great models. So we've been following their progress closely. I think Hawaii's also been working on some pretty cool telehealth initiatives. So it is a lot to ask, and we're not expecting, I think, ours to just dive right in and be health experts, but offering that space, and the ones that just started this last year, they're having a great time, and really, I think it's a great way to increase visibility for rural libraries. It's a great service to offer for patrons, and I'm excited about what the next couple of years are going to bring.
Obviously, we could do a whole session just on that application, and we could do a series on the different new major things that have come up for libraries that have taken on. But, kind of getting back to kind of Stephen's point about, or maybe one of you made the point about prioritizing, and is there a way to list all these things that, most people are not aware of it, and certainly your peers in government are generally not aware of the range of things that libraries are asked to do, but to somehow create this and say, well, we can only do the top 50 or the top 20, some number like that. So please tell us which ones to leave off. And it might be an interesting sort of exercise in awareness, maybe even a source of new support, because yes, telehealth is helping the health industry, which is the biggest single piece of the economy. 17% of, I don't know how many $1 trillion. And
it's not just the direct health. The mental health support that the telehealth visits allow for are helping in terms of, any kind of criminal trials and things. There's a lot that can be done with this that I think it's been really interesting to watch as libraries have seen less use of physical spaces thanks to COVID. I think repurposing meeting rooms for this kind of privacy to allow for the telehealth visits has been an interesting adaptation that libraries have made to still serve their communities. So no, I agree. It's interesting.
It's an interesting phenomena that not interesting because it's kind of obvious, this growth in demand for digital services, content, access, the whole range of it. Do you have any sense of, percentage increase? I mean, across your states, or how much more, digital content is being checked out, ebooks and streaming media, et cetera? Does that compile anywhere?
It's been an explosion of e-content. The number of circulations for the Ohio Digital Library have just skyrocketed throughout the pandemic. We were able to offer digital cards where people could sign up, especially when the library buildings were closed. And I think that really helped grow it as well. But it's happening hand in hand with the use of the physical materials as well. I just saw an article that print sales are up again. So I feel like, there's all the different media.
Is this creating a new awareness of library services? And skyrocketing is well, it's not, it's just kind of a subjective term. I mean, you think of, going vertical. So do you mean like doubling or 50%, or just some rough number you think that skyrocketing represents an actual increase? Just lots?
It's at least 50% increase. I think it's higher than that. We've got our Ohio Digital Librarian online. I don't know if you can throw something. I think you're still there, Anne. If you've got a stat you can throw in the chat that you could share, that would be great. But it's.
So do you think that results from people just being confined, or people learning about a service that they weren't aware of, or both? Or
it's definitely both. It's definitely both.
Yeah. Well, this is a good thing, I think, because it does scale pretty well without a lot more staffing. But it really is what people need, and it's another way to make people aware of the library's range of services.
But the different pricing model for libraries in terms of the e-content is something we really need to
huge
be.
deal, right? How you manage all this from these different publishers and their different regimes. It's a big mess. Did I see
and through some stats? We went from 5.6 million checkouts in 2019 to over 7 million in 2021.
Wow.
So. Dawn, the big come to Jesus moment is this 2-year pandemic has resulted in, from the stuff I'm seeing in the private sector view, in a 10-year, the predicted 10-year adoption of new technologies has been accomplished in 2 years. So our market of users has fundamentally shifted their behaviors, and it's permanent. So we will not be returning to normal. We will be building a new normal that is not a next normal. So how do we build that? And then why are our organizations misaligned with their knowledge of what's actually happening?
This was a term that came up early on in the pandemic, when it kind of, it just shook civilization to the core within a matter of weeks. And new normal, next normal. My feeling is it's like the term itself implies a new stability point. And I don't think we're looking at that. I think we're moving in. We were already in a state of constant change, but now it's just accelerating. And it was already accelerating, and now it's accelerating even more. So that's kind of what, the basis of Libraries in Response is. How do you position for change, for ongoing change. It's a major challenge, and you keep seeing and coming up with, you know, statistical information that shows, well, yeah, it's actually happening. I showed some statistical information on what's changing in the climate. How do libraries prepare for the role of people just showing up at their doorstep when there's a general outage or whatever, asking for help? I mean, you may not want to do that, but people are just going to, you know, they don't know where else. They'll figure out the library is a place to go, and they'll go there. It's going to be a growing one. I think that's a safe prediction. Stephanie, give us a final thought, if you will, and because we want to close our recorded session here. We can hang around a little while and chat, but give us what is on your mind here to finish the session today.
Yeah, I'd just say, you know, hang on, hang in there, and take advantage of as many of those opportunities as you can, while keeping in mind, you know, the core mission and what we do, and prioritize those needs. But I think it's a super interesting time, and again, I think this is kind of our time to shine. So that's my parting words: is hang on and hang in there.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed it. Wendy, please give us a thought.
Yeah, just going back to our quotes, Jake's quote about adaptability, I think, is just proving to be so very on point for what we all need to be thinking about. And my quote about success is not final, failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue that matters. And I think that's where we're all coming from. And I think the more that we can support each other in that kind of looking forward attitude, I think we'll be better off. So
That's great. And I mean, the country is lucky to have people like yourselves leading these organizations at this point in time. Really excellent there, Stephanie. This is a moment to shine, and a time just because it's just coming to you. You know, money will bring a lot of attention, a lot of responsibility, a lot of opportunity, and it's going to flow through the state agencies, and they're going to be really looking for the kind of answers that you all have. So I really look forward to what's ahead here in this year. I think this year is going to be really big for whatever new kind of temporary shape arrives that we'll be working with from there on. So Jake had to go. We hit the hour. He had an appointment, and we want to thank him, and we want to thank all of you, both of you, Wendy and Stephanie, for appearing. Sorry we had a rough start, but we had some good stuff here. The recording will be up first of the week, and we'll send that out to everybody. If they didn't figure out the link here, they'll have a chance to come back and see this. So with that, before we close, I'd like to ask everybody to unmute. If you would, everybody please unmute, because if we were together at a conference and we had these outstanding speakers here holding forth the way they have done, we'd be giving them a round of applause right now. So that's what we're going to do. Everybody, please, a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you all. Yeah, it's
Okay.
always fun to get together with colleagues.
All right. Well, next week we've got 3 more chiefs coming back, coming from Arizona, Missouri, and Montana. So these are all really interesting places, interesting people. And so come back next week. With that, we will close the recorded session now. Thank you all.